I know I'm burnt out. I know the signs, but I also am like so burnt out that I can't do anything about it. So I'm like trapped in this insane cycle of just productivity, kind of, to just be like, I just have to keep going and keep going. And even my brain might be saying you have to slow down, but I'm like physically trapped.
Hey, I'm Hannah, your host of Too Much, Not Enough. After a life-threatening burnout in 2021, I released the brittle version of success that was slowly killing me and built a life that feels as good as it looks. This podcast is for ambitious, soul-led humans ready to stop shrinking and start living big, bold, fully aligned lives. So if you've ever felt like too much and not enough, join me and my guests as we take an unfiltered deep dive into why being the real you was never the problem, and how to create a life your nervous system actually likes. Let's get into it. Today, we're diving into how our type A, perfectionist, overachieving ways can wreck our nervous systems and lead us into burnout over and over again. And though exhaustion is a symptom of burnout, it's more than that. It's a full body, whole system shutdown, a signal that something is deeply out of alignment and not something that we're just meant to push through, contrary to popular belief. And here's the kicker. Healing burnout takes so much more than just rest. In this deeply honest conversation, I'm joined once again by my sister, Becca O'Donovan, who's walked through her own cycles of burnout and is currently rebuilding her relationship to energy, rest, and self-worth. Together, we unpack what actually causes burnout, how we unconsciously feed the cycle, why burnout is both personal and systemic, and the exact shifts that we've made and continue to make to reclaim our energy and our freedom. So this one's for the high achievers who are tired of running on fumes. Boy, oh boy, do I understand how you feel. And who are just ready to feel alive again. Hey, Bex, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Good. So we're going to be talking about productivity, burnout, and kind of reclaiming your energy today. And I know that's something that you are in the process of right now, which I think is kind of exciting for our listeners to have someone who is deep in the process.
Yeah, like bang in the middle.
In the middle of it. Because it's one thing to talk about it in retrospect, but to be like, oh, I'm in the depths of it. And more importantly, the fact that like both of us have experienced many cycles of burnout, many moments, some shorter, some longer, many that we ignored before actually doing anything about it. And then in some cases doing stuff about it, but then getting back into it. And it's important to talk about all of that because it's not like a one and done. It's not you're like, I'm burnt out. Okay, I'm going to fix it. I'm good forever.
Right.
It is a constant like re-navigating depending on what season of life you're in or what's happening.
Yeah.
So I guess to start, can we chat about like, how did you know you were burnt out?
I feel like it's kind of tough because I feel like the term burnout like really came about more, widely during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was like all of a sudden this word that I started learning and hearing and all of that. And I would honestly say like I was kind of probably leading up to burnout around that time.
Yeah.
But then like so many people, the pandemic like really, shoved you into working hard, long hours, not having a bit of like a division between home and work and all that sort of stuff. That is sort of, I would say when I really started getting into burnout, I think actually you had told me one time, you're like, I think you're burnt out. And that was sort of when I actually started understanding what burnout was. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
But obviously that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, which is freaking wild to think
which
of.
like is indicative of how long I have kind of been in a cycle of burnout. So I think maybe to sort of answer your question, I think I started understanding what burnout was 5 years ago. Sort of tried to address it in these like little micro ways, but they were all very sort of Band-Aid solutions.
Yeah.
And I think clearly none of them were really sticking. And I was still repeating the same pattern over and over again. I kept sort of blaming an external thing that was causing my burnout. And so then I would leave that thing and then I would just repeat the same behavior in the new thing, whether that was work or even like pursuing something personally and travel and socializing and all that, that I was just like replacing it wherever I went. I would say I've been in sort of this perpetual state or cycle of burnout for a solid 5 years, but it's not until very recently, like a few months ago, that I acknowledged it once again. And my body was kind of pushed to its limit. And I now feel like I'm actually taking it very seriously. And as you just said at the start, I'm still kind of bang in the middle of recovery and unlearning and learning and all that sort of stuff. But I'm really trying to take it seriously this time.
Yeah, and I have seen a shift in you for sure compared to the other times. I think there's this thing, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, where we cycle through our lessons multiple times. And sometimes we do it unconsciously, like we're not aware that we're cycling through the same lesson over and over because we're just pursuing the same behavior. And then we become aware that we're cycling through, but not necessarily able to make a serious, real change.
Yeah.
And then there tends to be, I think, a moment of once again cycling through that same issue or challenge where there's kind of a breaking point and it's like, not doing it anymore. And I think people experience that in relationships where they go over the same thing over and over again. And then finally they're like, no, I'm done, I'm out. And they just kind of leave.
Yeah.
Jobs, same thing where it's like you take so much, you realize that it's not working, but you keep pushing. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, actually, I don't want to. And so I think with burnout, it's so interesting because it's very connected to exhaustion, right? Like this feeling of just being like, I'm so tired, I can't keep going. But there are a lot of different signs and symptoms. And like, so there is that exhaustion. There's that lack of motivation. I think there's a lot of like wondering why things aren't working, that you're like working so hard, you're trying so hard, but you're kind of like, you keep like banging your head against the wall. There can be a bit of that apathy where you're like, I just don't really care anymore. Compassion fatigue, maybe kind of a similar thing where you're like, I can't bring up the same level of empathy or caring that I have before. There's agitation, there's short-temperedness, irritation. There's so many signs and symptoms, but I believe in our current society, we are kind of taught to ignore those, or more importantly, that those are just normal byproducts of working hard, of hustling, of being successful.
Yeah.
And based on the title of this episode, which is Productivity Broke My Nervous System, I think that can be at the crux of it. This idea that like, if we keep producing, we keep doing, we're going to eventually be successful. But there is an in-between of that where like, you just keep pushing beyond your limits.
And I think sort of like tied to that, you said something about the same thing keeps happening over and over again, or like, and then one day you like hear it differently, or something happens and you react differently. I think the thing that I have struggled with so much when I'm like really in peak burnout state at work is that I feel like physically trapped by it, that I know what's happening. I know I'm burnt out. I know the signs, but I also am like so burnt out that I can't do anything about it. So I'm like trapped in this like insane cycle of just like productivity, kind of, to just be like, I just have to keep going and keep going. And even my brain might be saying you have to slow down, but I'm like physically trapped. And I think I've said to you, because obviously when you've seen me in a work state, it's like not cute. And I think I even said to you one time, I was like, I feel physically trapped by my work. So it's like, I know what's happening, but I can't do anything about it. Something that I started educating myself on even like a couple of years ago, so still learning things, but maybe not putting them into practice, is that there is also 5 stages of burnout. And that's what I think is also kind of, we have to almost be careful with the way we talk about burnout, because I think, again, burnout became this sort of buzzword. It's weirdly flipped now, I feel like, where it's no longer the employer's fault. It's like the employee's fault. It's up to you to take care of your burnout. And it's like,
up to you to take care of your wellness.
And if you're not, you're doing something wrong, as opposed to admitting that like the output that we're trying to live up to is like insane. And like kind of to that point, when people sort of say, oh, I'm burnt out, or if you even tell your employer that you're burnt out, it's such a wide scale. I think it's really interesting and important to understand that scale, because in the stages like 1 to 3, there's a chance that you can kind of like come back while you continue to work and all that sort of stuff. But when you get to stage 4 or 5, it's a little bit of a point of no return. Stage 4, I think, is actually called burnout. And prior to that, it's more like chronic stress and,
overwhelm possibly. Yeah.
Whereas like stage 4 is burnout. And then stage 5, I think, is like habitual burnout. And I remember I was like doing all these quizzes at one point to like be like, which stage are you at? And I like was really around burnout, habitual burnout.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm saying all that is because it's like, it can just become a bit of a buzzword. I'm like, oh, I'm burnt out. But maybe you're only like stage 2 and you actually can come back from that. But if you're stage 4 or 5, it's like you actually need some like pretty significant intervention. And it also is a bit of a, I think when you're using that term, then it's a bit of a cry for help too. Like you really want people to listen to you, that you are actually burnt out.
And help you. Like you've just made 3-4 points that I really want to get to. I think this one being really important, that it is a spectrum.
Yeah.
You can feel exhausted, tired, irritated at work, but know that perhaps if you took a proper weekend off or went on a proper vacation where you actually unlinked from work or unlinked from whatever it is, if you're a parent, unlinked from parenting, really took a break to rest and restore and then came back, it would probably be good enough.
Yeah.
That said, the idea is that you want to do that so that you prevent yourself from getting to, like you said, stage 4 or 5, because when you hit stage 4 or 5, it has to be a much bigger intervention. And beyond that, when you keep ignoring the stages and you get to 4 or 5, eventually your body's going to make the decision for you.
Correct.
And like you've experienced that. I've experienced that. I've talked about it a lot. My story where I hit like a full nervous system collapse, breakdown. For me, there were definitely physical symptoms, but it was a mental battle of anxiety, depression, panic, fear that I spent months like acutely recovering from, and then years really properly recovering from. Yeah. We had Steph Morris on the podcast the other day, and she talked about how she had a seizure from burnout that they thought initially was epilepsy, but like was in the hospital. Like, it can be extremely serious. Yeah. And that's why we can't take it as a buzzword. We have to take it seriously. I also really appreciate what you said about the fact that it's kind of flipped. Maybe around pandemic time, it was like, oh, businesses really need to look at like how they're working their employees and what wellness practices are they putting in place and what access to employees have to rest and breaks and things like that. But in your experience, like you said, it's completely flipped on you, where you went to an employer and said, I'm struggling very significantly here. Like I'm on the edge of collapse. And they kind of twisted it back to be your inability to manage your own workload.
Right. Which is like a horrible message to receive at any time.
Yes.
But like when you're also in that state, it's like, it's very dangerous. Yes. And I think I would get quite irritated when I would hear, and this is a number of different places that I've worked, but like this real resistance to anyone talking about burnout from like kind of senior leadership and just being quite dismissive and that sort of thing, that then also makes you sort of fearful of talking about it. It makes you feel inadequate, and that truly it's like kind of, it's working. They're kind of convincing me that it's a me problem. And I've had enough time over the last 5 years to reflect on the fact that like, it's not just my external environment. It is also me. Like there's a lot of things that I do or don't do or whatever that contribute to my burnout. Like no question. Yeah. But just not feeling seen, I guess, in that scenario is like very, very challenging. And I would really get my back up. And even if it wasn't about me, but the resistance to the term burnout at work, because I'm like, you don't know what people could actually be going through. And I can say from experience, like it's really dark and tough, and it needs to be taken very seriously.
Well, and that feeling of trapped that you mentioned, which I think very much related to a freeze response in the nervous system. The nervous system has gone from being kind of, overrun, activated, fight, flight, and then it goes down into that freeze collapse zone. Totally. Where like you said, your brain is saying, I need to stop. I need to rest. This is unhealthy. I can't keep going down this path. But you're almost immobilized in your ability to address it. So even more so, I think it's so important that anyone that you reach out to and say, I'm burnt out, or I am overwhelmed, or I'm exhausted and I don't know if I can keep going, that they reach out to you and say, okay, here, I'm going to help you, because you need that to help your nervous system come back into a space where you can now action or move towards things that are going to be more healthy. So it's even more disheartening to hear that employers or partners or whoever it is are not able to kind of recognize and reach out and say, like, if someone's saying they need help, let's take it really seriously. Because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to work, which I've never understood, humans are your workforce. They are your way to make money. I mean, who knows where we're going with AI, but that's how you make money. That's how you profit. So how are you not protecting your most important asset? Like,
I mean, that's like a whole other topic of just like, I could talk about that for days too. It's just like completely backwards. And
and it's that personal and systemic thing, which you kind of spoke to, which I would love if you could go a little bit deeper, because something that I think is really important about what we talk about on Too Much Not Enough is the radical responsibility that comes with healing, growing, and awakening to your own truth. So what things do you feel that you have done that contributed to like keeping yourself stuck in that cycle of burnout?
I mean, I think it's a combination. I'll probably like keep talking about work, because I really do feel like that's where
that's your personal experience.
Yeah. And that's the thing that has burnt me out so many times. But I think because it's that, it's like I had and still have, I won't know until I kind of get back into working again.
Yeah.
But I think it's a combination of like perfectionism and like this performative nature or something like that. Even if I wanted to take the pedal off the gas,
foot off the gas.
Foot off the gas. I always forget how that one goes. I can't, because it's like I'm still being like measured on my performance or something. I'm being evaluated, kind of like how you feel in school or something like that. So I'm just caught in this loop of like performance, evaluation, perfectionism that has kept me trapped. And I'm trying not to externalize the issues too much, but it's like when I'm being asked to do these things, one, it's hard to say no.
Yes.
And if I do say no, if I'm continue to be met with resistance, then I sort of feel like in my mindset at that time is like, I don't have a choice or something.
Yeah.
Like I just have to keep going until something happens.
Yeah. Something gives, something breaks.
That then I physically can't do it anymore.
Keeping along that thread, what have you had to unlearn and start to learn, or maybe even relearn, in order to get yourself out of this cycle, hopefully once and for all? Because you just spoke about like being measured in school and then, you know, being measured in work and feeling the need to like keep up and maybe feel worthy to an extent or accepted or whatever. But I remember when you were back in school, you very much figured out how to do just enough to like do well and not do more than that. And at some point that flipped, because I think I was always trying to overachieve throughout school, but for you it wasn't like that, and then it became like that. So I guess, what have you unlearned or relearned in order to be able to break the cycle?
Yeah, so I don't really know when that shift happened. I actually think maybe even just getting into work, I think.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I think even in university, I was pretty like bare minimum.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like I got into this evaluation. Maybe there was like more responsibility. It was like I could see my future more or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just got into this like hamster wheel of like overachieving and being productive and overdoing all that. But it has been a very long journey. I think learning about what burnout is, what the stages of burnout are, what my burnout signals are. Even if I continued to ignore them, like I knew what they were. So I kind of knew what was happening, even if I still didn't feel like I could do anything about it. If I can like try to bring it down to like one thing or something, I had to really shift my beliefs about how much I physically could achieve in a day. I think that I always had a very sort of grand idea of like how much I could actually do in a day. And I think in some instances I could push myself so hard that I actually would do it, but that's obviously overexerting myself. So I had to just start becoming more realistic about what a normal output is in a day. And like, even just like what the barriers are. And like, you know, if I'm looking at my to-do list that has 10 things on it, I need to actually drill it down to 3, and that
Yeah.
is actually still a very productive day.
Yes.
Or I can only do one thing at a time, so the next thing is going to have to wait. So there's these little beliefs that I just had to shift in my mind. And one of the things I kept saying, I was actually working like in a sort of like group therapy situation. And I remember saying to the therapist, I was like, I wish that someone from the outside could like look into what I'm doing and tell me that it's too much. And she was like, well, if it feels like too much, it's too much. Like no one could ever do that, because even if they could do that, their capacity or whatever could be very different to yours. So she's like, if it feels like too much, it's too much. And I think that was a really kind of big moment for me, because it made me almost like reclaim my own authority of being like, oh, I can decide if it's too much. I don't need someone to tell me it's too much. I want someone to tell me it's too much to validate me, but I'm like, I can decide. And clearly I'm not living well right now. So it's too much, regardless if it's not too much for so-and-so and is too much for this other person. Like, it's too much for me. And when I started looking at it that way, I started just trusting myself a little bit more and, recognizing the things that I was jeopardizing in order to keep up with the too muchness or something. That I think is sort of what helped me. Again, I was still in like a very, very chronic state of burnout, but it's like I could see what was happening as it was happening.
Yes. And I love that. I love the two things it seems you've hit on there are awareness.
Yeah.
So learning, like, what are the stages of burnout? What, are the impacts, and what are my signals?
Yes.
And that then links really beautifully to, I can decide what is too much for me.
Right.
So it's like, what are my signals? Because just because Debbie sitting at the cubicle next to me can just like go like an Energizer bunny doesn't mean that the fact that I can't makes me less worthy or, a worse employee or whatever. And also the thing that we've talked about a lot is that we actually don't know how Debbie's feeling.
Correct.
Because Debbie could be looking like she's got it all together, but crumbling inside.
Which I also think that a lot of people at work would have had no idea that I was struggling. I think it would come as a shock to a lot of people that I've worked with throughout my entire career that that's what I was struggling with. Because I would also put on a face and I would say yes, and I would just keep doing and doing and doing and doing.
Well, and you're very organized. You have a brilliant ability to take concepts and kind of break them down and figure them out. You are an incredible leader in the sense that you're very empathetic and you really support your teams and make sure that they feel heard and seen as whole people and not just as like working machines.
Yeah.
And so, I would probably agree. Like, that people would be surprised to hear that you were struggling and that you were facing burnout. And at the same time, I think some people might be grateful to hear that. To be like, oh, I was looking at Becca as this like North Star and not actually thinking about her as a nuanced whole human being who could also be struggling even though she looks like it has it together.
Right.
So
meanwhile, I was like hanging on by a thread.
Very thin
And I
thread.
think my friends and family knew that.
Yes.
But I don't know if my coworkers knew that as clearly.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too, and that just like on the friends and family thing, I think the other distinction with burnout, and I guess maybe when you're kind of trying to assess like how burnt out are you, it's like when it bleeds into the rest of your life is like also a very good signal of like, I have zero left to give after my workday. Like, forget about socializing, but I'm like, I'm not even fulfilling like my basic human needs.
Yes.
That's, pretty big sign.
Yeah,
that something's not
100%.
right.
And so really learning, like creating that awareness, starting to learn, not feeling like at the beginning that you have to just like fix it all right away, but simply, like you said, you were experiencing burnout, knowing that it was happening. You had that awareness. You started to build that awareness by, researching and learning or whatever it is. But you weren't necessarily actioning it, which is okay, I think. Like, I think we feel like we have to fix it immediately. You don't necessarily have to.
Well, and actually on that, one of the things, again, if it feels like too much, it's too much. I was very frustrated for honestly like a couple of years as I was trying to navigate burnout. And it felt like I was sort of being told like, oh, you need to do this. You need to regulate more. You need to do this. You need to do that, whatever. And I'm like, I am doing that. And I'm actually probably doing that more than the average person.
Yeah.
Like I was putting a lot of effort into really trying to do that. I even spoke to like naturopaths and they were like, oh, here's this like supplement that will help you with your stress and stuff like that. And I'm like, I understand these things help, but it felt a lot like they're sort of these Band-Aid solutions. And I was like, no one is addressing, including myself, addressing the fact that it's like, maybe I need to just admit that this is too much and I need to remove myself from the situation. And actually, now that I'm like talking that out, I do really think that accepting that it was too much and accepting that that meant I needed to remove myself from the situation because I couldn't keep up with it is the thing that I think has gotten me to where I am now.
Well, kind of broke the kind of last big cycle of
Right.
it.
To be like, it's not about regulating so much that I increase my capacity for XYZ. Again, those things are important. But at the end of the day, I also need to take a hard look and be like, maybe I just can't be in this space. This space is too much for me and I got to go.
What did removing yourself from the situation actually look like in practice?
I mean, you'd said something earlier about sometimes it's like, well, I was saying that I feel trapped and then it's, you know, sometimes like something has to happen to really get it into your head that you've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And my most recent sort of scenario was that I was just drilling myself into the ground at work, trying to keep up with everything. And it got so much and so big that I eventually ended up having sort of a panic anxiety attack at
Was it
work.
pretty much, yeah, like a full-blown panic attack.
Right. And like, I don't know what a really hardcore panic attack feels like. So I'm a little bit like, I want to be wary of what it was, but it was, for me, it was very serious.
Well, again, going back to what you just said about the fact that like, what is it for me? It doesn't have to be
Right.
this like the worst panic attack in the world. For it
I'm
to
like
be
trying to
legitimate.
dull down my panic attack.
You're like, it was pretty fucking horrible, but it wasn't the worst. I didn't actually achieve the worst panic attack ever. Let's just,
No, but you're right.
and I knew it was bad.
It was bad. And I had sort of a anxiety, panic attack type thing happen to me like a year or two before that. Now looking back, it was definitely sort of work related, but I also had personal things going on in my life. So I was possibly not taking it as seriously then, just in the sense that I was like, oh, there's a
lot on
lot
your
going
plate,
on.
yeah.
So I wasn't really taking it as seriously from a work sense. But because this happened like at work, what I feel was a bubbling, boiling point of events that had happened throughout my time at work, I had the panic attack and I was like, I have to take this seriously. Having a panic attack at work is not normal. And like, I have to take it seriously this time.
Which we talked about a little bit, like turn it off and be like, okay, back to work now. Like it's almost that was your default that you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to go back to work.
Well, and I remember because like when I was having my panic attack, I had called mom and dad and they were literally like trying to talk me down from it. Yeah. And literally like an hour or two later, I remember saying to them, I was like, I can't, it was a Thursday. And I was like, I can't do anything. Like, I'm like, I can't do any of my work for the rest of the day. I can't work tomorrow. But I remember sort of like just looking them in the eye and being like, I need you to tell me it's okay to not work. And it's like, I was trying to tell myself that, but like in that moment, I needed someone to just like,
kind of check the reality.
Also tell me, like, I'm like, this
Yeah.
is very serious and I need you to tell me that. Because right now my instinct is, oh shit, I've got so many emails to catch up on. What about my team? What about this? What about that? Like I felt, again, gripped, trapped, like that I was like, the thought of not answering my emails for the rest of the day was
It was like
a
catastrophic.
crime. Like,
Yeah.
I was going to go to jail. So
And that, folks, is when your nervous system is very out of whack and perceiving threats that
aren't
feel
real.
real but are not actually real. You
Correct.
will not go to jail if you don't answer your emails.
But it did feel like that. So that was the crux, I think, of what was happening. I would also like to mention that I had honestly kind of like fantasized about stress leave for a very long time. And anytime I heard if somebody else, like a friend of a friend or a coworker of a friend of mine or whatever, had gone on stress leave, I always was like, I know how they're feeling. And like, almost like I felt really like proud of them for doing it. Because going on stress leave, I would say, particularly in North America, is like kind of taboo. It's not something that's offered. And I say that because, you know, I have friends who live and work in Europe and there's actually like quite a lot of processes in place to actually sort of enforce stress leave on the employees when they're showing signs of things. And I'm like, that's not the case. I don't think in North America, also maybe just in the places that I've worked, like it's very frowned upon. And it's hard to admit that you need that. But I was, like I said, kind of fantasizing about it. I was like, I need that.
Yeah.
So I ended up talking to my doctor, and I'm mentioning this because it actually was like a massive weight lifted off of my chest. And I think I just wanted back to sort of wanting someone to tell me it's too much. I spoke to the nurse practitioner, and I was sort of like, this is the situation. I had a panic attack at work. I'm kind of wanted to understand what my options are. And then she was like, okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I just want to sort of understand a little bit more. She asked me a few questions. And then she was like, okay, from my experience, like high achieving women often need permission to take time off. And she's like, I am giving you permission to take time off. And I still get like emotional every time I say it, because it's like, and I said this to her at the time, I was like, I burst into tears, and I was like, you don't know how long I've needed to hear somebody say that, especially like a healthcare professional, to just be like, you can take time off. And she's like, you want a week? You want 2 weeks? Like, tell me where to sign. And she was like, and you're going to take the 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, we're going to check in again, and we're going to see like what you should do next.
Yeah.
So that was like a big moment for me. And I think coming back to the listening to what your body needs, but also knowing that like 1 to 2 weeks really isn't enough for anything when you're in that state.
Yeah.
And the things that my body was doing during that 2 weeks of stress leave, like I could see, I'm like, oh yeah, this doesn't even scratch the surface. Like I was in such a state of fight or flight for so long that when I just told myself like I'm on stress leave, and my one goal for stress leave was to not be productive, to actually like reject productivity. If a thought came into my head about being productive, I'd had to actively sort of like be like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't even feel like it was this anxiety that I should be doing something that I'm not. I had like a deep fear. I felt like scared. I was like laying on the couch thinking like I should be doing something. And I was like, I was scared. I'm glad I was able to clock what was going on, because I think that could be quite scary
and unsettling
if I wasn't aware of what was going on in my body, and a lot of the work I'd done leading up to that, so I could actually just observe what was happening. But it really shows you that your body is in this like state of shock.
Well, and I would imagine too, it's thinking, well, we've been good when you are productive.
Yeah.
We've been safe, or it's felt safe when you're productive, and you're now all of a sudden laying on the couch and doing nothing. At least in my experience, it's giving you these signals of fear, anxiety, perhaps depression, to say, get the fuck up off the couch and do something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to die, essentially, which is like, it takes
Or go
a
to
long
jail.
road or go to jail and then die. It takes a long road to get there, but that's what your body, your brain, your nervous system is thinking. Oh, if I don't get her back into productive mode, she is going to get disconnected from her tribe and be isolated and eventually die. It's crazy to think that, but it is that kind of life or death. And to have that fear come in, but more importantly, that the work you did leading up to
just
that,
about to say this.
hold the space for the fear, that is why we do the work.
Right.
We don't do it for that fear to never exist again. We do it so that when the fear comes in, when the anxiety comes in, when the panic comes in, whatever emotion it is, we can sit with it, we can witness it. We can be gentle and kind that is coming up. And also, we don't need to necessarily intellectualize it and be like, why is this happening? And what is exactly, and how am I going to fix it? It's like, how do I just sit here in discomfort and know that like, this is going to be the best thing for me in the long run? That's why we do the work.
100%. And I'm so glad you said that, because it was looping in my brain that it was, again, it's like I hadn't learned enough or unlearned enough or whatever to prevent the thing from happening. But when it happened, I could experience it differently, and I could almost rationalize with myself better and really understand what was happening in my body, so that I didn't get freaked out into thinking it wasn't what it was, or trying to be productive again, or something to that effect.
Needing to like get back to work and prove yourself and all of that.
Exactly.
Which is amazing. But I also would like to talk about how you've shifted since then in how you are embracing rest and joy in life, because even though I think the work you did leading up to this moment of extreme burnout helped you hold space for it and it was extremely important, I also think there was an element of you still being stuck in the cycle of productivity and you almost made healing a job.
Yeah.
Which you have now very much untangled from what I've seen. So I would love for you to share what has kind of happened since that moment you're saying of those weeks off where you were just like, this is scary, but I know that I have to do this for myself.
So I think there was a couple things. One, and I think it's kind of important in the topic of burnout, and if anyone else is sort of going through it, or burnout recovery more so. But what I did when I was on stress leave or whatever, that 2 weeks ended. And then basically I was also presented with another opportunity to have an extended period of time off. I had this, like, for whatever reason, like magic number in my head that I was like, I need at least 3 months. And again, that's something that I had to learn over time, that you can't fix this in a week. You can't fix this in 10 days. Like, you need significant amounts of time off and intentional time off to really make an impact, I think, or rest and recover. So I sort of had this magic number in my head, 3 months. I'm coming up to 3 months now. I'm even now still thinking I'm probably going to bump that to 4.
Yeah.
But what I did at the start of that was I actually looked up sort of what the stages of burnout recovery are and tried to understand even, and obviously this varies depending on your own situation, but sort of the amount of time that you should sit within each of those stages. So for example, the first stage is just straight up decompression. And that can last like anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks or something like that. And that truly all you have to do during that stage, or all you should be holding yourself to do, is like complete and utter rest. And if you have the energy, like fueling your body in a way that's healthy.
Yeah.
I really and truly, the first month that I was off, I was like, I am off. I slept for a month. My main aim was to like sleep and just move from my bed to the couch. I just slept for a lot of that month. Then as I got into sort of, month number 2, I started feeling a bit more energy coming back, but I was being very conscious that energy doesn't really mean anything and that I had to tread very carefully, because if I start overexerting myself again, back in the same place. So really what I continue to try to do in month 2 and what I'm doing right now is just like leaning into things that I really enjoyed. So I had to do, and I was kind of simultaneously doing some of this work in the lead up. I was trying to reconnect with my younger self, because I felt like, and this is so common again with burnout as well, that it's like you can really disconnect from yourself and forget what you like or who you are and what brings you joy.
1,000,000%.
And when I would look at things, that I thought brought me joy, I'd like look at that list and I'm like, I don't think that these things like actually bring me joy, and I don't want to do any of these things. And I actually don't even have the energy for any of this stuff. So I was doing a lot of work to try to, just reconnect with my younger self and do things that really genuinely brought me joy. And that was like a journey in itself. Again, this sort of started prior to me taking the time off of work, but it was very helpful in that moment that I was like, okay, I can actually just lean into some of these things. And sounds kind of lame, but I made this list. I called it like the little Becca bucket list.
That is the least lame thing I've ever heard. It sounds so fucking cool.
And it was basically a list of things that I, over time had tried to remember that I liked doing when I was young. And we're all quite childlike things. And, it was sort of just riding my bike for fun, or go swimming in a backyard swimming pool and start a collection, read poetry, plan a play date with a friend, make friendship bracelets. I actually noticed that we both have
We do have our friendship bracelets on. For anyone
I've had
watching.
a lot of requests for this, actually.
Oh, well, it's very beautiful. So if anyone who's just listening, Becca and I are showing to the camera our bead bracelets that we made one day. That was extremely fun day. They're very colorful. So if you want to order one, let us know.
I'm like, maybe I'll start an Etsy. But no.
But no, really, I'm not going to.
Anyways, those things felt very sort of, one, kind of intriguing to me, 2, very like gentle. It was like, I'm going to go on a bike ride. It's not for exercise. It's not for how far I can go. I'm literally just going out on a bike ride.
Yeah.
And I think also the list was helpful for me, not to get too like listy and productivity kind of vibe, but like it kind of just held me a bit accountable. It was a bit of a motivation to do something on the list. So,
well, the bucket list vibe of like being able to cross stuff off. And I think it's really important. I'd want you to keep going, but that we're not saying that like you burn out and you recover and you literally just throw away all structure, responsibility, like the balance. It's refinding the balance.
Yes.
That like typically you're probably burnt out because you've gone so far into that masculine energy of doing, producing, going, and structure without enough of the feminine flow to balance it out. So you're kind of just trying to find the balance again.
Yeah.
So lists are totally acceptable when you're recovering from burnout.
And because I was also trying to be very aware that I'm like, I am not overexerting myself. So there was a number of things on the list that some days I didn't want to do any of them, but other days maybe there was just like a really gentle thing that I could do that I'm like, okay, that feels like I could do that today. Or there's something that might take a bit more energy that I could do for a day that I have more energy. So it was a really like gentle integration into kind of rediscovering things that I loved.
Yeah.
Some things I did just once and was like, not going to do that again. But there were certain things like riding my bike that literally like unlocked something in me that really made me be like, holy shit. Like I forgot how good this feels. Again, just for fun, doing it purely for fun, getting out in nature, like the way it made my head feel kind of clear, and it just ignited something in me that really helped me connect with who I am. It was sort of just like a motivating thing to hang on to, because I was like, okay, like I'm still there. Burnout aside and this incident aside, it had been a very long time that I didn't know who that person was. So it was this very like, it was like just like coming home to yourself that just felt very nice. And I now am feeling more excited about things, like understanding what I like again, not being apologetic about it. I actually am really enjoying some childlike things. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a 34-year-old woman, but I'm going to make you a fucking friendship bracelet.
Like at a bar
and I
with
feel
my friends.
great about that.
Yeah.
Like it's really helped me come back to myself. And just one more thing I'll say, because I should have actually said this before I got into little Becca bucket list, was that another like key part of the sort of stages of my recovery is that once I'd slept for a month, my other main goal was to truly just meet my basic human needs. And I think as soon as I started saying it was to meet my basic human needs, and I was acknowledging that I was neglecting my basic human needs, like I'm not doing breath work, I'm not going to the gym, I'm not doing any of that.
You're talking about sleep, nutrition,
trying to move my body in some way,
but not necessarily like any sort of major workout routine. Or
like literally just like 3 meals a day. And they didn't even need to be at that stage, didn't even need to be healthy. I just needed to eat 3 meals a day, and I needed to drink water, and I needed to get enough sleep. And it was like I took the pressure off being like, oh, I need to do all this stuff to like regulate.
I need to meal prep, and then I need to breath work 30 minutes every morning, and then jump in an ice bath. And don't get me wrong, I love that stuff. But yes, sometimes it's stripping all of that shit away.
And I think that that's such an important thing, because again, breath work, ice baths, all that stuff, like that stuff is awesome. And that stuff is great, I think, when you have the capacity to do it. And the thing I want to make very clear to anyone else who doesn't feel like they can even meet their basic human needs, or are kicking themselves because they can't seem to get up to go do the ice bath in the morning or whatever. It's like, you got to dial it right back. You have to do your basic human needs first. And then once you're at a better place, and on top of that, then you can maybe entertain the
adding
add-ons.
Something that makes you feel like spiritually more alive. But that's not like the first thing you go to. It is having that like baseline of energy to then fuel the things that make you feel passionate and super alive.
Exactly. And even just scaling that back in my own mind and being like, oh, I only have to do these things, kind of made me feel good, because I was like, okay, great. Like I ate 3 meals today. Like
good for me. Feel
day done.
Very accomplished. Now I can go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I feel like I had to treat myself like a little baby or something and be like, you need care. And these things are very basic, but you have to do them and you have to learn them.
Yeah.
And then later you can get back to some of that other stuff if you want, but like not now.
Yeah. Which is amazing. I love it. Like I mean, your Freezy Girl summer has like totally inspired me to get back to some of that joy, the things that do truly bring me joy in life. And that's something that I'm still working on too, because as I build a business and build this podcast and a lot of big life things, personal things are happening too, that seems to have really like taken over what I focus on. But you've just been such a inspiration. The little Becca bucket list has just been like, you've been so committed to it, but not in a like,
I have to do
this way, but in a real joyful way. And I think that that's been so inspiring to the people around you and the people who've kind of heard about it, and hopefully to people listening too. You know, from what we said earlier, if you are waiting for permission to take a step back, to slow down, to take a break before you hit burnout, or to recover if you're already in burnout, we are giving you that permission here and now. We have the authority to say, take the break. This is your permission that if it feels like too much in your system, it is too much.
Yep.
Stop comparing yourself to everyone else and thinking that you can't handle it. No, if it feels too much for you, it is too much. This is your permission to take a break and start your own little whoever bucket list.
Totally.
And on that note, send us a DM and let us know what is on your little person bucket list. We would love to hear that.
Yeah, we'll try some.
Yeah, we will. We will try some. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Send us a message. We'll try some. Maybe we'll post some videos or something of us trying your little person bucket list stuff. The other thing that I find too that's so wonderful, because like you mentioned that when you were in that state of burnout, or in that like the real kind of acute moments of it, you had lost yourself. You didn't even know what brought you joy anymore. No. So anyone in that state, and I know that's exactly what happened to me too. I had a very clear moment when I was just before I hit a very like life-threatening stage of burnout. Just before that, I had this moment where I was like, I don't know what brings me joy anymore.
Yeah.
Like I could not name you what brings me joy. And it wasn't that I was like living this deeply unpleasant, unsatisfying life. I was doing stuff, but I couldn't name anything that personally brought me joy anymore. And so if you're in that space where you're like, I don't even know what it is, but you have a child in your life, a niece, a nephew, or your own kid, whatever it is, a friend's kid, just go spend some time with them.
Yeah.
Because like children have this unbelievable ability to just remind you of what is actually important and what is not.
Yeah.
And energetically can unlock something in you that then allows you to maybe go down that little kind of exploration of what might be good, or go ask your parents what you did as a kid that you loved.
Yeah.
When they saw you, they were like, oh my gosh, that kid is so happy right now.
Yeah.
Like it could be as simple as jumping on a trampoline.
I also jumped on a trampoline. That was on my list.
Oh, how was it?
It was when I went to visit my friend in Collingwood, and she just happened, she lives with like a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And
her stepdaughter.
Her
right?
stepdaughter.
Not just randomly, just to be clear.
I was like, I didn't know how to phrase that. They had a trampoline in their backyard, and I was like, oh my God, that's on my list. Like, and I literally, and actually she went out, and then I just jumped on the trampoline by myself. And I was like, this is just, it just brought me so much joy. I was like, I remember doing this in the backyard with my friends. Like, again, one of those things where like, am I going to jump on another trampoline again? Like, I'm not actively seeking it out
for yourself,
but it was just, you know, it was a very brief but joyous moment. And
well, and what a beautiful example of the universe. Like when you put out into the universe what you want, the universe will provide you. They will put a trampoline in your path to jump on, which is a great metaphor for
100%.
Like, when you come back to the truth of what you love and what you enjoy, a path will unfold. It may seem like when you're in the depths of it, how is this possibly going to work if I take a break or take a pause or take time off work or whatever it is, or make more space for pleasure and joy in my life? How is this going to work? Everything else is going to fall away, or I don't have access to XYZ, whatever it is. Things will magically start popping up.
And actually on that note, I think it's kind of worth clarifying just that I've been able to do this stuff because I am taking time away from work and or the things that I felt were, you know, contributing to my burnout. And I really do truly believe that that is, I don't want to say one of the only ways, but
for you in your situation,
that like I needed
way.
completely detach myself from the situation so that I could lean into this. And the reason I'm saying it is just that I understand it's not as easy to integrate these things into your life when you're in the midst of burnout, you're at work, you're trying to do all those things too, that it's like, it's not as easy as just going and jumping on a trampoline sometimes. Like,
but I kind of would almost argue that it is, in the sense that, like, yes, you currently have more time to be doing these things more often and really filling your day with them. And like you said, your ability in that first stage to just like sleep.
Yes.
Essentially, yes, that was because you were off work and you were able to do that. But the part about reconnecting to joy, like, they can be micro moments of pleasure. You don't have to go dedicate 4 hours a day to pleasure. Amazing if you can, but it can simply be, and again, the episode with Steph Morris on reclaiming your sensual self, we talk about this. It's like, what is already happening in your day that you can experience more intentionally and with more pleasure, and then from there maybe opening up.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I think I was just trying to, when you're bringing it back to the burnout, if you're like in a chronic state of burnout, like, don't feel bad if you don't have the energy to do those things.
I see what you're saying now.
So it's almost like a twofold thing. Like, it's like,
yeah, got it. Apologies, I misunderstood what you're saying there. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit of a rapid-ish fire question round now. And the first question is, what is something that you used to hide that you now lead with?
Not being as organized as I had made myself look.
So being a bit more type B than type A.
Yeah.
You lead with that now versus like being like, if I don't do this, my world's going to crumble.
Correct.
Love it. What would you say to someone who is afraid of doing the work, taking the pause that is required to get out of burnout?
It's so hard, because I think the reality is that you can only be the person in that driving seat. Like, you just have to get there yourself. I think staying curious and just like allowing yourself to even gently explore things that are niggling at you or sparking your curiosity. You just start there, and then it will lead to the next thing, and it'll lead to the next thing. Like, try not to look at it as this big, massive thing that you need to overcome. It's taken me a very long time to work through lots of different things. I still have many things that I want to work through, but it's just like one thing at a time. Yeah. But you have to get there yourself. Like,
baby steps. Yeah. Baby steps. And yeah, you're right. It's like you have to make the decision. Maybe you have to have the breaking point that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the world needs to hear right now?
Slow the fuck down. We don't need to do so much. Do way less.
Love it. And play way more.
Play way more, do way less. Like, it's just truly this time off and just trying to recenter myself and ground myself and everything, like, has literally taught me the main thing is, like, I and we as a society, like, are doing way too much. Literally just fulfilling your basic human needs in a regulated way, doing a couple things you enjoy, getting rest, seeing friends, takes up actually quite a lot of time and energy. So layer in just like the insane level of output that we feel like we're supposed to achieve. It's like, it's no wonder that so many people are struggling with burnout.
Yeah. If you heard that correctly, people, go to your to-do list, cross off 5 things.
Literally, like, delete your to-do list.
Just delete the whole thing. But no, seriously, cross off 5 things. You will be fine. We promise you. Yeah. From 2 people who have done that repeatedly over and over again, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, where can people get more of you?
Well, I'm sort of in the middle of gently trying to figure out what my next path is from more of a work career kind of side to things. I'm hoping to find out what that is and launch something soon, but I'm trying to be gentle with myself and taking the time to really figure out when I'm ready to do that. So I guess just like stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Perfect. Well, if you want to be connected with Becca directly, then you can DM us at
100%.
Too Much Not Enough podcast, and we'll get you in contact with her. As you know, she is my sister. I know where to find her at all times. But as you know, you move into your next chapter, and as and when you're ready, we will be shouting from the rooftops.
Yeah. And if anyone ever wanted to talk about their experience with burnout or anything like that, like, the thing that has come up so much for me is I'm like, I want other people to know that it's okay that they feel the way they do, that they're not alone in their experience. And like, I would love to talk about it. So reach out.
Jinx. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, Becca. I love obviously chatting to
Me
you.
too.
So until next time, everyone.